My roommate has an exam tomorrow morning and did not set an alarm. When have you held someone's future in your hands? When I give patients radiation treatment, if the wrong dose is delivered, I can't take it back. It has never happened, but the thought of it scares me. This one time, my best friend invited me to his beach house over a long weekend. I remember it was in September because the AFL Grand Final was on. I think it was 2001. Anyway, we were at a popular surf beach, and being the 16-year-old guys that we were, we started to body surf. So we were stuffing around for about an hour or so, swimming and whatnot, and my buddy was in the water about 10 meters beyond the breakers. I was probably 20 meters away, about to try and catch one of the bigger waves at the back of the set, when I heard him yelling. I couldn't tell what he was saying. I could just hear the noise, my best friend screaming, and my scumbag freaking brain just said, "It's a shark, N037. It's a shark. Just catch the wave and we will both live." I refused hundreds and thousands of years of evolution, and with every shaking muscle in my already tired body, I turned and swam as hard as I could to my mate. He was sinking in the water, holding his hand out to me, and could only gasp the word cramp. I grabbed him under his armpit and made him lie on his back, and I held him. So he is on his back, looking up at the sky, his legs cramping, and I've got my arm under his right armpit and across his chest. Now I have my left hand free and I kick and pull myself back to the shore. Thankfully it wasn't a massive surf day. I was able to get him back to shore in about 10 excruciating minutes and several mouthfuls of water. I've never told anyone that. Enjoy Reddit. TLDR. Literally held my best friend's future in my hand arm. This is kind of related. Ever since my father Ray married, I have never entered his room. 5 years and I have never stepped into his room. Not because his new wife is evil, on the contrary, she is sweetheart, but because I like respecting boundaries. My stepmom went on an emergency family visit for 2 weeks. On the second day when she was away, my father wakes me up and tells me I am late for work. So I quickly dress up. I do not find any socks to put on. Without contemplating, I was in a hurry. I entered his room while he was lying down in bed, picked up a pair of socks. He was lying in a weird way. It freaked me out. I tried calling out for him. No response. He was not able to move at all. I tried shaking him gently. He was just mumbling incoherently. I thought he was asleep and was extremely frightened. I screamed his name and he looked at me. It was a look crying out for help. I did see a lot of fear in him, like he did not understand what is going on around him. I called the ambulance while stricken by fear and shock. I am very thankful they arrived within 5 minutes. They told me in the hospital later that he suffered a brain stroke that morning on his right side of the brain. Thus the left side of his body is completely paralyzed, and that if not proper medical attention was given we would have passed away. He regained 40% movement and can walk with help after months of physical therapy. To think it was literally 10 minutes after he woke me up, and this all coincided with me not finding any socks, and entering his room and noticing him. The very thought of it. GG washing machine. Comma loses your socks. Comma so you can save your dad's life. Whenever I hold someone's baby, a little part of my brain tells me to drop it. What the frick? Brain. What the frick? Today I was thinking about student loans and then realize I'll get a bit of money when my grandmother dies, so that's good. What the frick? I like my grandmother equals. I remember the time I had a final and my roommate decided he wanted to sleep in and turned my alarm off before I woke up. All I need was a 20 to get an A. I got a B. That's what murder is for. I would never forgive my roommate for something like that. Not due to the consequence. In this case it was minimal, but due to the total lack of respect for the other person. I asked a stranger how she was doing once while on the bus. We struck up a conversation and became friends. I later learned she had planned on killing herself later that day. Go on, I'm listening. Act like it is on the middle of the day when you wake him up, because this is a golden chance to frick him royally over before you send him to the exam. So first you're a good bloke for waking them up, then you're a douche for fricking with them. Balance in the universe attained. My friend got her dissertation handed in on time and proofread because I was arranging binding and printing for her and proofreading over her shoulder whilst she was pulling an all-nighter. We got it handed in pretty much on deadline. and printed about 20 minutes before. I think the taxi driver might have broken a couple of traffic laws. Methinks you should wake your buddy up by walking back into the apartment like you just got back from class. Walk into his room and yell, "Holy crap, you're still here?" Seriously, dudes needs to start taking responsibility for himself. When I am in my car with it running and a friend of mine walks in front of it, maybe at a parking spot or in her driveway, itchy feet. My wife wasn't able to get pregnant, and then she got pregnant. We held that little life in limbo for weeks while we searched our hearts for which way to go. His life balance on a keen razor's edge. Future uncertain. Utterly up to us. Felt enormous. Impossibly heavy. Way too much faith for schmucks like us. He's 3 now. Upstairs sleeping. He will not soon know. Perhaps never. He very nearly never even got the chance. Perp. Old enough to be my father, sexually assaulted me working a volunteer night shift for a crisis line. Pressed charges and ensured hours of having to repeat what happened over and over. But he ended up in court. Only got 2 years, which was reduced to 1 year parole since he had no prior offenses. I like to think that gave his wife some pause, and that she doesn't leave her friends or their children or children's friend alone with him anymore. I'm sorry to hear your story and wish you the best, but I don't see how this was a small action of yours that changed his life. It sounds more like a big action that he took that fricked over his own life. Similar story to the ups, but mine happened every Tuesday, Thursday for 2 years. Roommate and friend had a 10 AM class every Tuesday and Thursday for 2 years. After him missing quite a few classes and being close to failing the class, my other roommate and myself took it upon ourselves to help him get up and out of bed. We both had an 8:30 class together and would get back around 9:30. Right when we got home, we would walk upstairs and whip our shoes and tennis balls at our sleepy roommate's door. We were his extra alarm clock in the morning. He still missed a few classes here and there, but he graduated with us and is now in his 3rd year of law school. I'm a college teacher in China. I failed a student out of college and I knew, before doing it, that I was the final nail in the coffin. I teach an oral English class, which is basically teaching conversation skills. A surprisingly high amount of students in China have 10 years of English instruction, but they've never spoken it. Just read, write, listen. My job is to get them to speak. This guy would either not show up to class or but wouldn't participate. Since it's a talking class and I can't talk individually to 45 students at once, I do a lot of group work to get them to talk to each other in English. He would end up partnered with someone and then he wouldn't speak to them and would do homework from some other class. Edit. He also enjoyed sitting and reading the sports page. When I tell him to put his stuff away and participate, at least for the sake of the other students that were trying to learn, he would sneer at me and do it, but still not speak. I would try speaking in Chinese to him, asking if he needed help, warning him he can't keep going as he's going, and he would laugh at me trying to speak to him. I kicked him out of class a couple times for taking out his cell phone and just talking to people on it during class. One day, I tried kicking him out of class and he said my head teacher said I can't leave class, and he sat there smirking at me. I then went to his head teacher after class and told her not to meddle in the affairs of my classroom. This sounds kinda mild, but it's really cause I just don't feel like going into detail about it all. She talked about how he doesn't understand English. Also he's poor. Also he's not very well educated. Also he's sorry. Also he's rude because he's poor and he comes from a poor family. Also all kinds of excuses. I said being poor has nothing to do with politeness or work ethic and that I had been having problems with him for months. If I had to stop my class to deal with him one more time, I'm failing him. She then told me that if I failed him he'd fail out of school. I said I didn't give a crap at this point. So the next week he was polite. The week after that he was right back to normal. I was pretty pissed at him, frankly. I had to fail him. He was the first person in his family to go to college, and knowing the culture over here, his parents were completely banking on him getting a college degree and taking care of them in their old age. They probably spent a fortune sending him to this school and now all that money is wasted cause he's a jackass. TLDR. Living in China, failed a poor college kid out of college cause he was a jackass and probably destined his family to poverty. About a year ago, a really good friend of mine was going to be set up to be married. He was 25 and was an electrical engineer, fresh out of college and ready to be married. She was a bombshell. She was 23 and studying to becoming a marine biologist. They had been dating since her freshman year of college and they were already engaged and had a place together. As in, they lived in the basement of her parents' house. About 2 weeks before the wedding, I went over to my buddy's house because we were planning a hunting trip and I was to meet there after I got out of work. He got out of work an hour after I did, so I was just hanging out in my car rummaging through my smartphone. Just passing time. I have arrived about half an hour early, mostly out of just excitement. About 5 minutes into my intense Facebook news feed browsing, I see a man exiting the front door. He didn't look like any sort of handyman or businessman, just a regular dude. He doesn't spot me parked on the curb as he walks down a few houses, gets into his crappy car which also parked on the road, and drove off. Now, at this point, I'm pretty sure that his dude wasn't there for any sort of business. I get out of my car and go up to the front door of my buddy's house. I knock on the door and after about a minute of waiting, my friend's fiance opens the door almost in shock. The look on her face told it all. I never told her that I knew, but that put me in a dilemma. My buddy loved this girl to death, but at the same time, she was, as far as I was concerned, a cheating W. Do I ruin this relationship for him right then, or hope that she changes her ways and that never happens or comes up again? That night, sitting around a campfire, my friend cried for the first time in the 15 years I'd known him. There was no way I could keep that from him. God forbid. 5 years down the road, he catches her in bed with somebody else and he's even more brokenhearted. We sat around that campfire until the sun came up, mostly just me letting him talk. He goes home, confronts her, she owns up to it, and he broke it off right there. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened had I not said anything. My father just had surgery and was recovering. He was back at home. He didn't have a breathing tube on him, so when he fell asleep he'd stop breathing. I had to wake him up constantly so he'd start breathing again. I was up in a town I'm not normal in. Me and my friend decided to ditch out on the party we were at because it was starting to get out of hand. You know, cops getting called. So, we're outside a little ways away while I'm smoking getting ready to leave and we hear yelling and scuffling. Next thing I know, two of the people that were at the party come running past us at full speed. Boom, down the alley they go to our left. Cops show up not 10 seconds behind them. See two kids run past here sitting there thinking, oh how these kids will love me. Yep, they went far away, pointed to the right in the complete opposite direction. Better hurry up man. They were booking quick. Zoom and they're gone. Never knew the kids but I'd seen them around before. I saw one of them later about a couple weekends after. Struck up a conversation with him about what happened that night. Man, was he pleased with me. Told me he was on scholarship to the university and he would have been royally effed if he'd gotten caught, especially with having drugs on him. Just some weed. Became friends and still talk to the dude. He is graduating next year along with his female friend who was running with him. Really glad I was able to stop such a bad thing from happening to the guy and to make friends with him. And that's how your sister's rapist got away, son. I got a new machete a couple of months ago and my best friend came over to check it out. We're sitting down on the couch watching TV and he's holding the machete kind of glaring at it intently. He then stops, looks over at me, and said, you know, I hold your life in my hands right now. He then looked back and we watched Somehow I Met Your Mother as if nothing happened. Good times. Anytime a story begins with I got a new machete, you know it's gonna be fun. You're a gentleman and a scholar. I am near impossible to wake up in the morning and routinely sleep through 5 separate alarms. If it wasn't for my friends and roommates these past few years I would have flunked out a long time ago. Just this semester alone I've missed 3 exams due to oversleeping. Would have been 6/10 if my roommates weren't as nice as they are. At that point, might be worth seeing someone about your sleeping pattern. It's impacting your life. I was walking back to my apartment with my friend at maybe 2 AM in the middle of the night. No cars or people in sight. My friend was just about to cross the street when I randomly called his name to hold food. Not 1 second later, a car speeds past the corner going insanely fast. We just stood there for a few seconds trying to comprehend what just happened. He would definitely died if I hadn't called out his name in that moment. My friend gets incredibly wasted every time he drinks. He's a small guy and gets into fights, one time being with our gigantic angry drunk friend who was about to beat the living crap out of him. I saved his life by getting him out of that, put his arm around me and dragged him to a bedroom and put him to bed. Even though he was ridiculously difficult and slapped me in the face a few times, I'm a girl. I literally saved my drunk butt friend's life. Why are the tiny drunks always the fighty ones? A couple of months ago, my pregnant wife, 28 weeks, got pneumonia, and only 3 days after showing symptoms, she slipped into a coma. At noon on a Friday while doctors are trying to stabilize her, they set me aside and her OBGYN bluntly says we have 2 problems, and if we don't separate them we will lose them both. I get paperwork to approve an emergency C-section, 12 weeks early, and for blood transfusions. I thought who the heck wouldn't sign this paperwork, and realized that some people for religious reasons would not. Basically, my signature stood between 2 people living or dying. For your information, wife woke from coma 9 days later and is doing fine. Baby still is in NICU, and has had no problems. Being a somewhat religious man, I don't see a reason why anyone would not sign this. Upvote for life. A couple years ago, I was hosting admitted students in my dorm so they could get a feel of the college before they made their decisions. They were somewhat dickish and at one point disappeared to go smoke weed. I could have called campus police, which would have led to them being unadmitted, but didn't. It could have ruined their lives for a while if they hadn't gotten in, since neither of them a backup plan. No, I didn't care about their weed habit. I cared about their overall dickishness. That reminds me, an evil Emmy would let my roommate sink, especially after he's been rude to my girlfriend. I find it both reassuring and depressing that there are so many others that spend time imagining kicking someone's child in the face. Reassuring because it means I'm not that crazy, and depressing because that means I'm not special anymore. I'm planning to bring my cousin to the States. I'm the one filling out his affidavit of support. Without me he would be stuck wasting his life in a third world country. Wasting his life in a third world country. I think I understand what you're trying to say, but the majority of the world lives in developing countries, and I'm fairly sure they don't consider the entirety of their experience as a waste. I often led people deep into caves where I am the only one who knows the route. I tend to never tell people when I get lost, because as long as I'll look confident, people will have a good time and trust me. Guess I always on this kind of situation because I'm teacher. Every words that I say would probably affect students' life. I always encourage them to do what is right to save them from doing things that might cause them problem or endanger them. Hope you're not an English teacher. A friend of mine had recently started using H. He met this girl and was in love and she convinced him to do it. He's more of a son to me than a friend, really. Anyway, after a while she started getting to his head, so I went to his apartment to check up on him. After I managed to get to the bedroom, I found them both strung out on their bed. She rolled onto her back. Before I could even speak a word, she started vomiting. I watched as she choked, and I could have saved her, but she had become too much of a liability and decided my partner would be better off without her so that she wouldn't get in the way of our burgeoning business and angst. Too obvious. Just barely caught up to and scooped up an autistic kid sprinting towards a busy street. Speedy little 6-year-old. Almost 3 years later and he's my favorite student to ever learn with. Incredibly hard worker for himself and others. In college my GF bought ludicrous tickets but took too many shots followed by too many pills while pre-gaming. Instead of insisting she could sleep it off, I called the EMTs and they took her to the hospital for the standard stomach pump, etc. Turns out if I had left her in bed she wouldn't have woken up. In my first semester of college this girl I knew would get obliterated every night combining all kinds of drugs, Xanax, alcohol, opiates, etc. I would wake her up every single day by any means necessary for her 10 AM class to prevent her from failing out of college since she's plenty smart. Just reckless and irrational. Yes, Reddit. I was entrenched in the friend zone, but I just didn't want to see her completely ruin her life while I could do something about it. 3 years later she's clean and doing better than me in school and yells at me when I miss class. When I was in 10th grade I had a crush on this girl. She always seemed so depressed every time I saw her. Anyway, one day I was just calling her up to talk to her for a while like I usually do when I missed her. 10 years later she told me that phone call saved her life. She was about to drown herself when the phone rang. We had just graduated high school when I was having a falling out with a close childhood friend of mine. We were very close, even so much so that we considered him a part of the family. Well, we had our issues and I was tired of dealing with him because at the time he was struggling with compulsive lying. He joined the Air Force right after high school and I never wrote him or kept up with him. Weeks later I get a phone call from my mom. Turns out he had put my mom down as a reference for his security clearance. When the investigator asked my mom what her relationship was with my friend, she said, well, he's a close friend with my son but they've had a bit of a falling out recently. And according to her, when she told him that, the investigator said he wanted to talk to me. I never bothered contacting that guy. I'm a nurse. Every moment that I'm at the hospital I hold multiple people's lives in my hands. It's a very rewarding career, but also incredibly stressful knowing that your actions can easily lead to a patient's death. My roommate adopted a dog, and the contract required her to take it to a vet within 5 days of the adoption or it would be taken back. She's too lazy to find a vet, so I call my parents and make the appointment for her and tell her when it was. The morning of, I wake up for class and realize she never set her alarm. The office is 30 minutes away and the appointment is in 45. So I frantically wake her up and she runs off, comes back complaining about the cost and such. She got the dog killed shortly after I moved out, but while I was there I did all I could to keep it alive and somewhat happy. In primary school, I don't know what that equates to in the US, I befriended a girl who was always alone, because I was too. She was lovely, and we became good pals. One day in the cafeteria she took a bite out of her dessert, and within minutes started retching, heaving, gasping for air. Everyone around her, including myself, was panicking and screaming, but no teachers were present, only clueless dinner ladies. Being her only friend, I knew that she suffered from a severe peanut allergy, so I sped off to our form teacher, telling her to bring my friend's EpiPen portable injection to counteract her allergic reaction. I was rewarded by our form tutor and she ended up being my first kiss. Lost contact before college though. I'm an EMT in busy 911 area. My first code, cardiac arrest, was a drug abuser from a local shelter that I have taken before for ridiculous things. Working as an EMT pretty much makes us hate these kinds of people. We see on a daily basis how they abuse the system, taking an ambulance to the ER at 3 AM for a toothache, while we got pulses back on scene. I regularly think the only reason why I helped him is because I was at work and was being paid to do it. I'm not entirely sure I would have helped him if I happened to walk by off duty. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.